Thanks, everybody. Yes, I'm Hazel Stone. So, I'm the National Curator of Contemporary Art for Forestry England, which is an amazing job. And Today I'm going to be talking about approaches to creative responses in the landscape and talk you through very briefly some of the artwork that's been created and interventions by artists since the beginning of the arts programme for Forestry England. Um, so yes, and the hope is so that you can see a range of approaches, and then that leads on to the discussions about how we engage with audiences and contemporary art in the landscape. So um, so let's move on. Okay, so welcome to the forest. And this first slide is really just a reminder for me to say these are working forests. So Forestry England cares for and manages over 1,500 forests in England. These are working forests, and so any art that happens in the forest has to really work with all the other forest management that goes in to make sure these special places are resilient now and for the future. So I was talking earlier with Anna and Pete and saying it was a very special introduction for myself joining the organisation 6 years ago in the North District and sharing an office with ecologists, foresters, wildlife rangers, rec rangers, engineers who all work and all have an expertise, different expertises in terms of caring for these special spaces. And my expertise was to try and be that bridging point between creative looking and knowledge and their knowledge, which is a very special place to be. So you'll see this is very different to somewhere like a sculpture park where you might see all the sculptures ahead of you. And very often artworks in our forests involves a journey, a seeking out, but very much in the context of these beautiful places. So where did it start? On to the next slide, please, Anna. So 1968. So this is when it all started, and this was a groundbreaking moment. This was up in the Northwest, in the Lake District in Grizedale Forest. We started our first ever arts program, and that was started because one of the foresters, Bill Grant, got the Winston Churchill Fellowship to go to America, and he saw a theatre in the forest over there and thought, this is brilliant. This is brilliant, bringing people into the forest through the arts. I want to try that and do that over here in our forest. So that's where it started. So in Grizedale, there was a theatre in the forest, and where actors such as Dame Judi Dench and various other people played and performed. And then the groundbreaking, award-winning sculpture program began. On to the next slide, please. So since that moment, over 200 artworks have been created in that specific forest. And they were created through time spent in the forest, getting to know the landscape, observing forestry practice, speaking to the workers, etc. So that was really informative about how the artwork and the art collection developed there specifically, and how art continued in these special landscapes beyond this forest. So this fan belonged to David Nash, who was one of our very first artists in residence at Grizedale. And that's one of his quite famous artworks in development, which when it's shown is the other way up, and it's called Running Table. And he said at that point, this art didn't happen in these landscapes. And it was quite controversial, very controversial. So he had to prove himself as an artist. So he got up before the workers, he used the same equipment as the workers and worked longer than the workers. And slowly they embraced him, and as did the public. But it was a tough sell, he told me, but it was a very, very informative time. And all the artists would look around and use materials from that landscape to create moments, pause points for people to find and stop and look at the artwork and the landscape around them. So moving on to the next slide. So some of you might recognize this. This is an Andy Goldsworthy piece called Taking a Wall for a Walk. And again, this was from a residency in the same forest, and this was his first ever dry stone wall piece. So what he did was he used existing infrastructure. So there was dry stone walls in the landscape already, because before it was a forest, it was farmland. And he extended an existing wall and meandered it through the trees using the materials around him, using traditional techniques. What's beautiful about this piece is not only its form, but the fact that it's very environmentally friendly, it's locally sourced, it uses traditional techniques, it's an intervention inspired by what he found around him. So a very beautiful piece of work. On to the next piece. Richard Harris was actually one of our first ever, he was the first artist in residence. David Nash was the second. And he was a younger artist, a more emerging artist, and he found it challenging. So he kept coming back year on year, and he made a number of pieces in the forest, permanent and temporary. And he was inspired by the way of connecting pieces by balance and using the kind of the stone and the wood together to create shelters and forms and structures that bridged across the trees and across the landscape. So this one's called Hollow Spruce. And the next one, Cliff Structure, which is still there. And these are timbers from the forest and stone from the forest, just balanced against the steep landscape. It's very beautiful in person. So again, simple materials from the landscape, creating interventions. Moving on to the next slide. Again, from this is the last one from this collection. I'm going to show you today. This is Lala Morrison, and this is called Lady of the Water. And this is one of the public's favorite pieces because it uses the landscape, the environment, the weather as material to complete the piece. So it's site specific, time specific. Every time you go and see it, it's going to look different, feel different. And there's something very beautiful about that. And I imagine through this project, there's going to be something very beautiful about how site and time and sound specific each of your interventions will be. So on to the next slide. So where are we now? Well, we've got our national art strategy, and it's got a beautiful strapline of Rewild Your Imagination. And it is about using the arts to inspire people to come and visit and enjoy our forests and learn about our work and connect with the environment, and particularly create meaningful. So this is through 3 program strands, which is signature projects, creative development, which is residencies and interdisciplinary thinking, a bit like this program here, and creative participation as well. Looking at more contemporary works and engagement, we've got pieces such as Clockwork Forest, which is the next slide, and it is on an all-ability trail, and this piece is a number of brass keys that have a beautiful composition. That is, the piece is completed by the audience turning these keys, and it plays this beautiful, almost music box sound quality that enhances the magic of the forest and is very audience specific in its form and tone. Really beautiful, playful piece. And then the next piece is Roop, by Estonian artist Birgit Oigas. Apparently Roop is Estonian from Rupor, which means megaphone. And these are 3, you can only see 2, but there's 3 of these structures in this forest, co-commissioned with Lakes Alive. And they are like many of the pieces that we have in collections that are less temporary. They're designed to be pause points, to evoke some sort of action or looking. This one is to stop and think about sound. There are also mini shelters and mini stages. So we have had musical interventions in them before, mini performances as well. And they're just very popular interventions in the landscape. The next one is an award-winning artwork by Marshmallow Laserfeast, who did a residency in one of our forests and created this beautiful experience, VR experience, where the audience wore these headsets and had the backpacks on that vibrated and followed the journeys of insects and animals of the forest, such as dragonflies and things like that. And although this piece tours many venues now, still, it was the experience of the sensory experience of this, the physical forest and this digital engagement, which was so magical. That's what the audience told us. So on the next slide, you can see, it is amazing. Yeah. You can see one of the journeys. I will share a link to that. Actually, it's just very beautiful. And for us, it was quite, at the time, it was different because it wasn't sculpture, and we'd learned as an organization, a forestry organization, we understand physical structures. It was new for us, and it was very exciting because we also think about animals and insects as very much as part of our work. So it was a really lovely approach by the artist to take. Moving on to the next one. This one is called Interstellar by Steve Messam. And this was, again, about creating a memorable experience. And these are illuminated spheres that on a tarn, which is a small lake in one of our forests. And it's called Interstellar, which means amongst the stars, because the surface of the lake reflected the stars above, so that the artwork was in amongst the stars, bringing the sky down. Now, this piece, people were walked through the forest quite a way, really, to this piece. And it was that part of the journey which was as much part of the artwork, really, because they were walked through by foresters, by wildlife rangers, by craftspeople, rec rangers, and they were informed about different aspects of their work in the forest as they went along. And it's that sense of connection and soft learning through walking with people that was very well received, and sort of broke down barriers for people to contemporary art and to forest at night, which is normally a bit scary, but when you're guided by people who are passionate about it, it's okay. So that was that piece. And the next piece is slightly different. This is Sally Matthews, female sculptor who makes these amazing animal forms. It's called Wolves, and they are wolves created by sculpting mud and sticks from the forest floor on an armature. And so after lockdown, we thought about context and art and what does it mean right at this minute. And people weren't allowed in the forest, and the animals had taken over a little bit, come back a bit more and changed their habits a little bit. So we thought we'd play with that a little bit. And wolves once did roam these landscapes. So we asked Sally to create a couple of wolves that had returned to the forest during lockdown. And these are still there for people to happen upon and to try and search out. So that was us thinking a bit about our relationship to the natural world. So moving on to the next slide. Forest histories is something that is something that artists have really engaged with site specifically, in lots of really beautiful ways. On the left, we've got a printmaker who has a studio in one of our forests, Shona Brannigan, and she works with foresters and gets slices of wood when the trees are felled and prints them using this Japanese technique where she burns the surface, and the softer grain burns away, leaving the raised harder grain, and then she prints that. And then what happens after that is really beautiful. When you've got a forester and the artist side by side, the forester will then read the print, reads the tree, reads the forest, about what happened in that tree's lifetime. So it's about how the art can open up different ways for people to talk from their different perspectives, these meeting points. And on the right is Lorna Singleton, again, who uses traditional techniques to create swill baskets, and talks to the public, teaches them about how she manages as a contemporary maker the process and coppicing, and just what wood can do. And it's just really lovely that people can touch wood and think about wood as growing trees, but also as material that's renewable and yeah, traditional endangered crafts as well. So moving on, this really is a whistle-stop tour of some of our art program. Our centenary, so 2019 was our centenary, and this was a piece commissioned for that by Rachel Whiteread, and it's a Nissen hut that was in Dalby Forest, and this is in Dalby Forest, and she cast the inside of it, and then the structure was removed. And so that's a permanent reminder of those people that worked in the forest during that time. Moving on to the next slide, this is a digital commission, a mass participation digital commission that we did to celebrate women in forestry, and specifically the Women's Timber Corps that very little people know about, but have heard about the Land Army, Women's Land Army. So the Women's Timber Corps, affectionately known as the Lumberjills, was a story, undertold story that we wanted to tell through contemporary art, bringing people to our forests or connecting them with other forests in different ways. The small squares are images of women in forests from that time through to today that were sent in and created this beautiful collage of one of the original lumberjills that was sent in by her son. So very moving personal stories, ways of engaging lots of people and having quite a high impact and legacy. So just the last three slides on the whistle-stop tour, just celebrating the awe and wonder of contemporary art and scale in our nation's forests. So we work with a lot of different partners in different forests, and this was Inside Out Festival and Luke Jerram's Gaia at Moores Valley in 2021. And for that, for the staff there, it was very moving, because this is what made the forest be that place that families and children had this special experience in and want to come back. And this is how the contemporary arts can really, really help us connect with different audiences. So beautiful pictures there. And the next slide is our International Photography Award, Earth Photo. That is our touring program in partnership with the Royal Geographic Society and Parker Harris. And this is a really, really interesting concept, actually, because we present these in our forests, these photographs that through an open call, photographers and filmmakers send in images of different environmental contexts and what it means to the people in the story. And so bringing together all these international conversations about the environment and climate change into a forest context is a really interesting thing to do, because it brings a local context to a global problem, really. So it is a very, very interesting way of engaging with contemporary art and climate change. And then I was going to finish on The Forest Eye, which is a piece created in Dalby Forest. And I'm just going to, Anna's kindly going to play the video for me, which I thought it was a great one to start with because it brings together what we do, plant trees and contemporary art.
Hi, so I'm Claire and I'm part of Standing Your Rhyme. For the past few days we've been in Dalby Forest, North Yorkshire, building a 300 metre wide eye. Working with Forestry England and the Environment Agency, the 300 metre wide eye will be planted with 500 beech trees, alder trees and maple trees in the shape of a child's eye. The forest eye is being created to focus attention on climate change and to show the important role of resilient forests in tackling it, as well as to highlight children's idea for a flourishing future natural environment.
Artworks like this are really there to evoke and provoke empathy, provoke emotion, so that then people act with their minds and actually come up with a solution. The Forest Eye is a planting project where we're using one of the solutions to tackle climate change, to capture carbon, to actually make a piece of artwork. So we're using art and science, and we're really marking a point in history where we are doing something about it. Today we have a school from Thornton Liddale that have come to help plant the trees, and it's really important to have children engaged because it's children that are going to be really affected by climate change. It's not all doom and gloom, there's wonderful opportunities, and these children today were demonstrating that you are able to do something about climate change and have a great time doing it and learn about science and be in the outdoors and enjoy the outdoors as well. When you're making a forest, you're thinking 50 years, 100 years ahead of time that people will come and visit this space. This is something that's going to be here for hundreds of years. It's going to come beyond my lifetime.
Our plan is to build a second forest measuring around 2,000 metres across, and it would be the face of a young girl, and that will be called the Forest for Humanity. If anybody is interested in helping us with this project, please get in touch, we'd love to speak to you.
Brilliant. So thank you. And an additional part to the engagement, so you saw the children planting that forest, the Forest Eye, was an online aspect to it, a sort of a legacy piece where people could participate in and enter enter their answers to the question that was posed about what's your hope for forests in the future. And yeah, so my hope is that contemporary art continues to engage as wide a group of people as possible with these really special landscapes to help us protect them and enjoy them. So thank you.